Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Town Hall Chat. I'm Christella, Christella Says on Twitter, and joining me is Jenn Perry, my co-founder of Main Street Creative, and at that Jenn Perry at Twitter. So today we've been talking with you guys on Twitter about negativity and haters and trolls and what does that all mean? And
Fun people.
yeah. So for you, Jenn, I
Yeah.
mean, and we can talk a little bit about me and my experiences later. You tend to be more of the avoiding negativity type of person.
Yeah, I do. I tend to be a little safer, I think, with my posts and topics when I'm writing online. I try to sort of do the whole I don't want to offend anybody and, sort of attack everything from all sides. So I've been pretty lucky to, for the most part, avoid much negativity online. But saying that you can't always, like it's you can only stay safe for so long.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that as blogs and businesses and anything really online grows and catches some sort of virality, there's this almost intrinsic nature online. The trolls kind of come out. And,
Hmm.
and those people lurking in the darkness come and they have all these negative things to say for you and about you and I was reading reading comment sections in places like YouTube makes you want to punch a wall because you're just like, why is everybody so negative? And why are these people so critical when they're just sitting on their couches doing nothing? And they're being like, well, that girl's fat, and you're like, well, yeah, but what are you doing? Better. So, and that's kind of my take on it. So, like we were talking about on Twitter, for me, I said I have a really interesting kind of perspective on what blogging and social media is and what it does to people and the reactions that they have. So in your experience, what kind of reactions have you seen from people online on all sorts of things, like people who get really sensitive about comments made, or people who are just offended at the idea that a post exists, about businesses, all that kind of stuff? Like, what kind of things have you seen before?
Um, so I think the one that sort of intrigues me the most is when there's complaints on business sites. Somebody will go and complain about an experience or something like that, and we've seen a few of those lately go quite viral.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy how much they will just be passed on. Somebody has one bad experience at a business, or and it wasn't it's usually when it wasn't handled. It wasn't the bad experience itself, but it was how the owner or the manager chose to handle it, for example. And then that goes completely viral, and that's very interesting to see how quickly that can spread and how that can affect a business. So that's one that sort of really jumps out to me.
For sure. I mean, I had a coworker of mine, probably less than a year ago, had an experience at a restaurant, and he went online on the page afterwards and posted about this experience. And and what he said, he was very angry and upset at his experience because it was two things. One, the service that he got wasn't good, and then when he complained about the service, the response that he got to the complaint wasn't good. So those are already two things where you're like, why is this business kind of doing that? And then when he posted on there, they didn't even have a Facebook page. He just kind of said, like, if you go to this restaurant, you shouldn't go to this restaurant because they did this and this and this to me. And he tagged the restaurant in a way on Facebook where you can tag places that you've been. So like a place as opposed to a business or a page. And the restaurant oh my gosh, it was less than 2 days. It had over 3,000 shares in just our small community, and I think it went up to like 16,000 or something crazy like that. And that was a huge hit to that business. Not only did they not really respond to it properly, in my opinion, but they didn't want to respond to it. So I actually contacted them and said, hey, I do this for a living. Not that I was trying to pitch them business, but I was just like, here, I can give you some advice on how to handle this if you really want to make it better between him and also to show people online kind of what to do. And they really weren't hearing it. They were sort of like, no, that guy's a jerk. He shouldn't say that stuff about us. Like, we're talking to lawyers and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, people have a right to say whatever they want, especially if it's a valid, true experience. And that kind of comes up with what's the difference between an angry customer, what's the difference between a hater, and what's the difference between a troll. Now, Jen, what do you think is the difference between Well, angry customer is obvious, but what's the difference between a hater and a troll to you?
So to me, a hater is somebody who possibly was turned off by you by one thing you said at one point, and then they sort of make it their goal to then comment negatively on everything and disagree with everything you post, whether or not they actually disagree. Whereas,
Like genuinely dislikes you.
that's right. Or, and then to me, a troll is somebody who literally just seeks out people and writes negative stuff, and they have no connection to that person, no connection to the story they're reading. They're just writing things just to be a big douchebag.
Yeah, to me, I kind of align the word hater with more of like a detractor, like someone who disagrees with you or disagrees with your business philosophy, or you just wants to speak their mind about the way in which they are discontent and you're involved. And a troll, like you said, is someone whose main goal is just to be an a-hole at the end of the day. They just want to incite some sort of reaction out of people, so they go around and say things and do things that are just obviously rude and uncomfortable, and that's the difference between those two things. But then when you're talking about an angry customer, obviously a hater and a troll are people who maybe could take better, routes in how to handle their anger or frustration or whatever. But when you're dealing with angry customers who are unhappy with service in a real way, should they be posting like that online? Like, should they be going on to those business pages and saying that negative stuff, or should they keep it to themselves?
That's a really good question, and that's one that I think can have so many different answers. I think that they really need to, sorry, a train driving by, they really need to try to resolve it at the level on a more discreet level first.
Yeah.
The worst, what I learned, and I learned this at Blistum actually last year at
Yeah.
Blistum when we had that session and they talked, and I really kind of it stuck with me that when you have a bad experience, you shouldn't immediately go to social media and just be like, I had this awful experience at the store and that's it. You should be in contact with them privately first and try to resolve it so that you can then go on social media and say, hey, I had this problem, but this is what they did to resolve it. I'm really happy with what they did to resolve the issue, and turn it into something more positive. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. You may try to resolve it on a more personal level with them, and they may just not be interested. They may not be responding to your, to your contacts, or they don't want to talk to you about it, or they don't want to fix it. And then in that case, that might cause somebody to say, okay, you know what, I want to tell all my friends and family, don't go to this place.
Yeah.
Because as we know, word of mouth is like the biggest, it can be a very positive thing for a business, but can also be a very negative thing for a business. And
And
so they try to use that power of word of mouth to deter people from going.
for sure. And I was going to say, it's hard. I know, because you and I, we work both kind of perspectives. We work on behalf of businesses who may have negative experiences with customers. I mean, it happens. At the end of the day, every once in a while, you're going to have a customer that doesn't have a good experience. Sometimes it's your fault. Sometimes it's their fault. Sometimes it's miscommunication. But how you handle that says a lot about your business.
And really, when somebody's posting on online for everyone to see, they're trying to get your attention. That's really what it is. They haven't gotten your attention before,
Yeah.
and now they're trying. It's the best way to get your attention.
And I think that with the advent of social media, for the first time, consumers at large could have a bigger voice than the brands with the money and the advertising. So for the first time, people were able to stand up and call attention to themselves and say, I've had a really bad experience with this product, or, look what I found. Like, all the time I see on Facebook now is those pictures with, the diapers or the baby food and the stuff that has the worms or the weevils or whatever they're called in it, and people are so disgusted, and it's been shared, 200,000 times, and the company has to do something. And, I feel like sometimes it's fear-mongering, just like with the Ebola stuff that's happening right now. Like, people are taking things out of context or not getting the whole picture before they're sharing information sometimes. And also, at the same time, at what point do the companies have to respond, and how do they respond, and what's the best way to respond? So I know in my experience as a person who's been a community manager and I've consulted with brands on kind of like their social media and the best way to handle these situations, sort of PR disasters, is, never ever delete comments is the first thing.
That is the biggest, yeah, I see that happen on brands, big brands and small brands alike. They'll think, okay, I'm just going to delete these comments and they'll
Yeah,
go
if I
away.
just delete it, no one will see it, and how dare they write on my page? And what happens then?
I-
Well, the person
yeah.
gets mad, and then they write it again, or they find another way to share the information in which you can't control.
Mhm.
And for me, what I always try and tell the businesses in terms of, how to manage this situation is you have the control when they post it there. You have the control and the opportunity to make the situation right, or at least appear to make the situation right. Not that you shouldn't want to, but sometimes it just can't. Sometimes you are dealing with someone who's just going to be negative no matter what you do. So never delete is the other thing. What else would you recommend to businesses that they don't do on social media when it comes to negativity?
Um, I would say don't respond in the comment. Respond to it so that everyone else can see that you are responding. But just respond with, say, a
Don't
phone number
manage the
or an
trauma.
email address, or a hey, send me a PM. Let's resolve this.
Yeah.
Use a very sort of general statement, but something that's showing that you're going to make an effort. Then other people who are reading that comment later can say, oh, look it, they had a problem, and right away they commented on it, and they're going to resolve it behind the scenes. And then and you can still leave that negative comment on your page because it actually shows that you take those complaints and comments and suggestions seriously.
Yeah, and I think, when it's a difference when a business is getting an overwhelming amount of negative comments. And I think that, in some cases really big brands get an overwhelming amount of negative comments from people who just want to get free stuff every day. And that's one thing. But when you're dealing with a smaller size business and someone who has a legitimate problem, I've in the past worked with car dealerships who, someone had a bad experience in buying, someone had a bad experience in service, and it's not necessarily that that's exactly what the business does every time. It's just in that situation, that's what happened. And, I found that the best way to deal with those people is to call attention to the fact that you want to resolve the situation,
Hmm.
offer them an opportunity to resolve the situation publicly. And actually, one thing that I kind of learned is to also get them to show that the situation had been rectified publicly. So usually I would do some sort of agreement if it was from a business perspective, offering them a free service or, working with them to come to a happy conclusion for everybody and just say, hey, would you mind going back on the page and just letting everybody know that we did handle this and that you are a satisfied customer now? And sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. But what it did do was really cement the fact that not only are you good at actioning those problems as a customer service perspective, but you're also taking into consideration, what people are seeing and how your company is portrayed. And, that person, if they're genuinely going back and saying, oh yeah, they totally helped me with my problem and, I was mad and they solved it and I thank them for that, then it really makes a big difference in how you are perceived online.
Absolutely. I actually, it's funny that we're talking about this today because today I actually wrote something on a company's Facebook page. I won't say which one it is,
Too.
but basically there's a company that their mailing list is getting a little ridiculous. I'm getting a lot of emails from them. It's to the point where we used to get one email a week and it was great and whatever with whatever the specials were, but now it's getting to like 4 or 5 emails a week and it's sort of annoying. So I wanted to somehow send them a suggestion, but I couldn't really find anywhere on their site to do that. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to throw a little comment on their page. Within an hour, somebody had replied, thank you very much. I think they said, thank you for your comments. We will forward them to the appropriate department for consideration. Just saying something like that,
Yeah.
awesome. So,
Acknowledge. So that's the first step is acknowledge people's problems.
yeah, that's
And then
exactly it.
solve them if you can. So step one, acknowledge. Step two, solve. Step three, proof positive, right? So one thing I want to talk about, and it's good that you mentioned that, is as bloggers and social media representatives and people who work in this industry, I feel like sometimes we have to censor ourselves even more when it comes to our experiences or handle things a little bit differently when we have negative experiences because we don't want to be perceived as people who try to antagonize brands because it does happen a lot, and people with social media influence have more influence to antagonize brands. But at the same time, then who's going to want to work with you if you're calling out brands that aren't giving you good service?
Right.
So I had an experience with Burger King actually. I went to Burger King and I ordered something, and the order literally took like 20 minutes in the drive-thru. It was just a bad experience. The person was rude, and I knew that it wasn't exemplary of all of the Burger Kings and all of that particular brand. But that experience was bad, and I felt like I needed to be compensated for it some way. Like I didn't get the stuff that I ordered. I waited a really long time. I was really unhappy with the service, and so I contacted the brand privately, and I just said, hey, I'm a social media influencer. I understand, that you don't want this kind of stuff published live. I don't really think that calling the store and complaining about it would do any service, but I just want to make sure that someone's aware of the fact that this particular store is operating in this way, and I would like to be compensated for at least the cost of my meal. And they were super good about it and super friendly, and they thanked me for contacting them privately. And I think that in a way there is room left to train the average people into how to effectively handle these things. Like, what's the first step that you take when you're unhappy with the brand? Is it blasting them online, or is it contacting them privately? And then if that doesn't work, where do you go from there, right? So, and brands have to be responsible for making sure that people are aware of what practices they want them to take. If people are getting confused and frustrated trying to look for a place on their website to take issue with something, then they are going to go public. So what steps are you taking as a brand to try and give people an opportunity to speak up? And as a blogger, do you feel like you kind of have to censor yourself in what you say?
Oh, sorry, I'm losing, my internet's being wonky. I heard, as a blogger, do I have to censor myself in what I say?
You feel like more compelled to be nicer to brands that you aren't that happy with or something?
I think that it's hard for me because I think I've always been a little on the nicer side anyway. But if anything, being a blogger has taught me a little how to behave better, because I'm seeing it sort of from both sides. I naturally want to be nicer because if another brand is seeing that I'm behaving in a certain way towards another brand, they may not want to work with me because they're afraid that that's going to be a problem.
For sure, I totally agree with that. So don't forget, guys, if you're watching and you have a question, you can always ask live through the questions app. And if you're watching after the fact, leave us a comment. So we'd love to get your comments and answer your questions if we missed anything in today's live cast. So moving forward, we had some really awesome conversations with Jen Panarski and Jen at Highly Irritable on Twitter today for Town Hall Chat, and Jessica Terry, and a bunch of the awesome bloggers that came out and chatted with us. And I just wanted to say thanks, guys, for participating in that chat and also giving us your input on sort of like, as a blogger, how do you handle negative comments, and how do you handle people who trash talk you and take your stuff out of context and read it? So that's kind of the next subject I want to talk about tonight, which is, as a blogger, what do you do when someone is being negative on your blog, in the comment section on your Facebook page, and they're attacking you or attacking your ideas of what you're saying? Do you internalize that? Do you get angry? What do you do to kind of challenge it?
Well, there are many different ways to handle it. It depends probably on the way. For example, I don't have, like I said, I don't really get a lot of negativity, but definitely not as much as you.
I don't know why people are so negative with me. I mean, I just talk about the top things you could possibly talk about all the time.
The one that sticks with me, though, is the one where I wrote a post about my favorite apps that I use on my phone. And I love this one because I literally was just decided to write a post about the apps that I like the most. And it probably was the way I titled it that offended some people, I guess, in a way. I said it was like must-have apps for women or moms.
It was must-have. It was just like my favorite 5 apps that I use.
It was apps, I basically said, and it had like, it was very stereotypical women apps, but I'm a stereotypical woman. And that's the problem. I'm a woman who wants an app for grocery shopping on my phone, and I love things like that make my life easier. And I am the typical domestic mom at home. I'm the one who's doing the cooking and the cleaning and shopping and all that. So I was posting apps that I love, and people were taking offense to it. One person in particular not only commented very negatively on the blog, but then proceeded to share my post
With
um,
your
all
friends.
over, yeah, with her friends all over, and try to get other people to comment on my blog. And I thought, wow, like how crazy is this? So in that case, I think that I handled it in one way, which I needed to sort of, because I knew that I wasn't going to get, there was nothing I could say or do to this person to change their mind. They were very vocal and sort of going forward with it or whatever. I responded to the comment on the blog. I basically, by saying that, these are, you may not see them as apps that are good for you, but in my life, they're apps that I love. And then I ended up, it kind of struck a nerve with me, and I felt like there was more, it created a more, like a bigger
Yeah,
discussion for
created
me.
another conversation for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up writing another blog post sort of in response to that person,
Yeah.
explaining in further detail why it was that that those, were my favorite, and that I didn't feel the need to apologize for being sort of a stereotypical woman, and it's all fine and dandy that you don't do the grocery shopping in your family, but I do, for example, right? So,
You shouldn't. It's just that's kind of what I perceived from it was that sometimes people have it in their heads that everybody should be exactly like they are. If you're a feminist, anti-establishment, socialist, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, I, at the end of the day, we're really good friends. We hang out all the time. We do everything completely differently. And I would never expect you to do the same things I do, the way that I do them, and nor would I judge you for doing something differently. Like, and I like that my friends are made up of all these different types of people. So to come on someone's blog and say, oh, you can't write about that. That's not the real woman experience these days. You're so like traditional. How gross are you? Like that would just be a really kind of like obtuse way of looking at things. Really, like really, that's just obtuse to sit back and say, how dare she act like a stereotypical woman? Well, you know what? Sometimes stereotypes are there for a reason, and it doesn't mean that everyone behaves that way. And you shouldn't paint everybody with the same paint or the same swatch. I can't remember the thing, but you should be able to recognize that diversity is what makes us so special. As bloggers, as marketers, it doesn't matter. Like it just doesn't matter, and I think it really gets me fired up too because I'm like, I think that's to me the problem, like the seed of the problem is just that people are unwilling to admit that their way of doing things may not be right because they have to, if they're not right, then they must be wrong. And that's not, to me, the way that things are. Just because I do something differently than you doesn't mean one of us has to be wrong. It just means different sides of the coin, right?
exactly.
But people are people, and so they get offended. And we were talking on the town hall chat about sort of like, are people overly sensitive these days? Do they react to things before really digesting what people are trying to say? And I know in my experience, when I wrote last year about the gift of not giving a thing, and my experience with my kids and wanting to lessen the amount of gifts they were getting in exchange for people being more present in their lives, the major amount of detractors and haters or negative people who were on there weren't really catching what I was throwing, if you know what I mean. It
Yeah.
seemed like they read the first paragraph and digested that, took offense to it, and then ran down to the comment section to tell me how evil and horrible I was. And, so in a way, it kind of just made me laugh because I was like, oh my God, you couldn't even read the entire blog post because if you did, you would know that I would never say people have to take my kids to the zoo or they have to do this or they have to do that. The concept was just my kids don't need any more stuff, but they do need people in their lives who love them, so do that. And people who did read it and did digest what I was saying saw that reflected in themselves for the most part, and that's why it went like stupidly viral. Woo. But
And it was funny. The funny thing about that post too is I saw so many people who were commenting, thinking that you were looking for free daycare,
yeah,
and
like
I thought
I
that
think
it was
one
just,
comment said something about like free babysitting, like
yeah, there was a few of them like that, and it was just like, what are you? But it's again, it's people who aren't reading it or who are completely taking it out of context. And I have a bit of a theory about some people that, I mean, I'm getting a little kind of more philosophical or analytical here, but I think that some people are just, they don't understand tone in writing and like how to read it.
At all.
And you have to also, when you write it, you have to be very careful as well, because you have to
Well,
understand some
I
people
was,
kind
to be
of,
honest.
yeah. And I think, and because of the majority of the people that did, get it, and that's why it went viral, because people were getting it. But the problem
I
is
think
that
it
the
resonated
tone,
with people.
yeah.
And I have to say, stuff that generally resonates with a wide audience
Mhm.
does get like its fair share of people who are not in agreement, almost as a rule. It's like
And
an
there are people who always seem to want to go against what the majority is saying.
it's just that it's like that friend that you have that everything you say they have to respond to negatively no matter what you say.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just that person.
It's like in bed, but they don't know what they're doing it, I don't
I
think.
don't think
So,
they do. I don't think they realize that they're even, which is
I mean,
sad. So
we
then,
all we all have our quirks and things and stuff, but
yeah.
it's just very funny when you're on the receiving end of it to kind of to see it that,
So
like
then,
that.
but in that case, in those circumstances, as a blogger, do we try and clarify our points? Do we let them look stupid, or what do you do? So, like in my experience with that post in particular, I actually commented on pretty much every single comment and just said if I didn't have anything to add to the conversation, then I just said thanks for reading, and sometimes. In a lot of cases, actually, the other commenters kind of jumped on the person who was being negative and kind of came to my defense, which was also really cool to see. But, so I kind of just had to be like, yeah, haha, serves you right, troll. But, I really didn't let it affect me because I knew that 90% of that 20% of negative people were really just misunderstanding what I was saying. Um, so then, in the antithesis of that, when people just strongly disagree with you, and it's not a misunderstanding, when you're writing about stuff that can be controversial, piercing ears, cloth diapering, it's amazing what people will get into, like long, drawn out squabbles about, and
Circumcision.
circumcision. And it's funny because my circumcision post, I feel on Blunt Moms that I did, I feel like it was actually a response post to someone, my friend Pam, who actually gave me this lovely hat. She's not amazing. Thank you for the hat, Pam. It was a response to her post, which was pro, and mine was anti. But
What? A blogger can have a different opinion and they can still be friends?
well, what I was going to say is, and we managed to respectfully disagree with each other,
Mhm.
and it kind of created that same air in the commentary where it was almost like we diffused a lot of those negative opinions because we were able to maintain like I see your point and I respectfully disagree with you, but thanks for coming out. And it was interesting to see the effect that that type of commentary, like being respectful about what you say in return, can also make a big difference.
And that's the exact
Um,
reason why I couldn't write a post about that, because I can't write posts about things that I feel that strongly about, because I feel like I would just lose control of myself when people commented. So there's
yeah,
certain
totally.
opinions that I hold back and I keep to myself and I don't write about, because there's certain things that I just feel so incredibly strong about. I mean, it's the same reason why I haven't written a lot about vaccines, because you know how my feelings on that. I've kind of
Yeah,
kept quiet. I've written a few sort of things that have been about my struggles with it, but it's because I just feel like when you feel that strongly about something, you might actually end up sort of causing more
yeah.
problems
But
than any
then,
of your commenters.
and from a business perspective, I hate to kind of be the one to say it, not really, but sometimes having something that's a little bit on the riskier side or gets a little bit of negative attention can cause something to go viral or at least get it more attention than it would. So in a way, you're sort of hacking the system as someone who's running a business page or blog page if you're getting people to have these open discussions. And there is a difference between disagreeing
Mhm.
online and having a debate about something, which I welcome. I love it. I think it's an awesome way for people to even work out their own opinions on things. And then people who are just being harassing or belligerent. And what is the difference between someone who's harassing you and how do you handle that versus just someone who's just kind of being disagreeable? So, have you ever had an experience of a harassing person online?
I have not.
Oh, lucky you.
I'm a lucky girl. I really haven't. I don't even know how I would handle it. Like the one great thing is that, I mean, we talked about how businesses should never delete posts and things like that, and they should always deal with them head on. As a
There
blogger,
are some things that
I
need
think
to.
we have the ability. That's the great thing to moderate comments, and we can delete them and make them go away. And the only problem is there might be some that are decide that I'm going to just kind of keep commenting, keep commenting, keep commenting. I'm not, you can't make me go away, but I think that's sort of on the rare side. And you know what? I do believe that I have deleted one comment once, and I cannot, for the life of me, remember what post it was on. But it's in the back of my mind that there was a time where somebody wrote something. It was obviously very trollish. They had, it really was just it was more of an opinion about me, even though it had nothing. My posts like.
You're so stupid. I hate you.
Yeah, it was something they were basically just criticizing my parenting or something based on something that I wrote about my kids, and I was like, you know what, I don't have time. I'm not even gonna like get into it. Let's, just deleted the comment. I'm not interested in having that on there, and that's our right. We can do that. Like, there's no, rule that you have to leave comments there.
Honestly, really hard to remain mature sometimes when people are acting immature toward you.
Hmm.
Because you kind of you have to fight. I know I would consider myself less mature overall than you. You're probably one of the most mature people I know at large, like including 60 and 70-year-olds who are you're far more mature than. Um,
Thanks.
but no, you're just a very like mature, level-headed person. Where I tend to be, I tend to run a little hot on the head side of things. So, I do try to kind of step back and say, okay, is what this person's saying making me angry because I'm offended by it, or is it just offensive? And I think there's a difference between those two things too. I'm willing to step up and tell someone, you're being offensive right now, bro, and people don't like that very much in my experience because they don't want to be told that what they're doing is wrong. And, so what do you do in that case? Well, me, I say something. You're like, hi, bye, thanks very much.
Well, and we said this in the Twitter chat earlier. Sometimes you just gotta kill them with kindness. Sometimes people, it's very obvious they're looking for a fight. You can tell in the way that the comment is coming across, or just they're really looking. They're asking you questions because they want you to clarify something, and you know that they're setting you up for something. They're gonna then attack you even further. So in those ones, I just kill them with kindness. I say nice things. Thank you for your opinion. And you know what? Those ones are the ones that they get thrown off by that because they're looking for a fight. They're looking to make you mad. They're looking for the big, like, where you throw them like 6 paragraph response with, basically justifying your entire post. So if you just throw them a nice, like, oh, thank you for your comments, like you said, sometimes you just smile and nod and, you know, tell them they're pretty.
I think there's a skill level to remaining blissfully kind of ignorant or blissfully inspired by the people who can be a little bit more on the negative side. So we got a question from Joanne Foe, which says, so what is the best approach when someone comes at you daily, hourly on social media? What if they do it on your private page, but you work with a blog? So it sounds like more kind of like someone who's becoming a bit of a harasser. And there's a huge difference between negative people, negative commenters, trolls even, and people who are being harassing. And I've personally been harassed by a few different people for various reasons. One was an incident where I was like live tweeting an event, and the person was it just seemed like they disagreed with me, but they kept kind of tweeting me and tweeting at other people to kind of try and get them involved, and then it just kind of escalated from there, and my only response that I could do to that was just ignore. I've had people send messages to companies that I've worked for saying that I was not a good person and things like that. And obviously, I'm an amazing person, so they were lying. Um, but no, like really, you never know what you're going to get. And sometimes you do get a crazy, you land on one. And they're like minefields and they explode in your face and you have to try and kind of deal with it. In my experience, when you're dealing with someone who knows you and they're attacking you in a variety of forms, which is something I also went through really recently, my best response and the response that I chose to do and the response that was effective was just to not engage. Disengage as quickly as possible. If they're tweeting at you, if they're adding you to stuff, block them, report them, do not respond. Don't even say screw you or leave me alone or get away from me because that's just adding fuel to the fire. Everything you say to those type of people is just more reason for them to come at you.
Let them have the last word.
Let them have the last word, because if that's all they really want, what does it really mean to you? And, in my experiences, sometimes those people were trying to hurt me for personal reasons, and that sucks. I can't change them. I can't change their perspective. If they feel or act a certain way about me, I can't make them change that opinion. But what I can do is make it very clear that I am not the instigator of the situation, that I am not propelling the situation in any way, and it really makes them in turn, especially if they're being really consistently attacking or commenting on your blog or writing messages about you or posting on Facebook about you, that type of person makes themselves look stupid all on their own. You don't have to do anything to draw attention to that because they will do it all themselves. And then what are they left with? They're just as unhappy as ever, but at least you're not the person causing it. You're not adding to the conflict. You're just kind of saying, okay, whatever, crazy, you stand over there and dig yourself into a hole. I'm going to go get a latte,
You also have to keep in mind, too, I just want to mention this, if it gets really bad, do not be afraid to contact the police.
No, and that in that particular experience for me, we did draft a letter, and we were about to contact the police had they not kind of let up. So you have to know what your line is. What is the line that they have to cross in order for you to be able to take it to that next level? And if they do cross that line, then don't be afraid to take it to that next level, because there are police procedures and things in place to help protect people, whether they're public figures or average Joes, into being safe online and tracking those individuals and making sure that they can't hurt you.
Yeah.
Cease and desist letters only go so far.
I want to mention something about cease and desist letters. Can I mention something? As for a business, because we remember, I don't know if you remember, I won't say anything about who it was. You remember the issue with the photographer? Do you remember that? Just so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, there was a photographer. I wasn't involved, but I watched this go down on Facebook.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I know.
So do not, as a business, if you have somebody you have a customer who is very angry and they are writing on your page and you're deleting their comments and they're writing on their personal profile and they're doing the whole thing, do not pretend you've contacted a lawyer or go and grab some cease and desist letter off of Google and copy and paste it and throw your name in it and send it to them and pretend to be a lawyer. Those things are so obvious, and that just creates so much more of a problem for you. Your business is going to look so dumb. Like, don't lie, basically, at the end of the day. Be honest. So even if you're dealing with someone like that, you're better off to ignore them rather than to make stuff up and send fake letters. And if you really do have a lawyer and you want them to send a letter and all that, all the power to you. But
the lawyer would never,
it's so
advise you to talk about sending a cease and desist online.
No, they would tell you to stop. They would, the
lawyer would say no more.
I think people think because we've seen this more than once. I think people think that they sound smart or threatening, or that they're going to call the person, call their bluff or something by pretending that they have more power than they do. I don't know what it is, but the biggest thing I can urge anybody, do not do that. Because it's so transparent. You can see it. Everyone else can see it.
You can see it, and even when you do get lawyers involved, you know the laws that are involved in all of this before you start throwing cease and desist letters around too. Because I had an incident where someone sent me a cease and desist letter about a personal experience I wrote about on my blog. That was a personal experience to me. There was no lies, nothing, and that person implied that I had somehow defamed someone else entirely, obviously, so I never do that. But beyond that, I received a cease and desist letter telling me to take down the content, and not only was what the cease and desist letter contained a very ill-researched and all that kind of stuff, but what that person didn't realize is sending a cease and desist letter with intent or knowledge of the fact that what you're sending is untrue is actually a crime.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lawyer would never advise you to send a cease and desist letter without officially researching everything and understand the terminology too, because sometimes I think written law, when you research it online, you can take it out of context very easily. So if you don't understand exactly what you're reading, you can take something out of context and do it in a way that is actually the opposite of what is meant to be said. And that's pretty much all I'll say about that. But it's funny to someone who gets a cease and desist letter and goes, do you even know the law? Like, this is the complete opposite of what you're supposed to do. So, keep in mind when you start getting lawyers and things like that involved in those conversations, there has to be a measurable loss, first of all. So if you're sending a cease and desist letter to someone, you have to be able to prove that in some way, shape, or form they've lost you money. Without that, then the law does not care, because it doesn't do anything. Unless you're unable to find a job, you've lost money from products or services, your business had to shut down, things like that, you have pretty much no case in most cases. So, actually talk to lawyers when you're getting into that situation and actually get the full details explained to you in layman's terms.
We need a disclaimer now. We are not lawyers, blah, blah, blah.
Law advice. We don't know anything about
If you need legal advice, go to a lawyer.
You're better off getting legal advice from the lawyer.
Don't make it up.
But in reality, what I'm saying is you go do your research. Don't trust us. Don't trust a law website. Don't trust anything. Just go do your research and talk to lawyers and figure out what it is that you are trying to accomplish and how you're going to do that.
But we hope it never gets to that point.
Yeah, don't let it get to that point ever. That's not good. And if you can't control it, just back away slowly. That's my only
we learned it in kindergarten. If you have nothing, nothing nice to say, then don't say anything at all. And that also extends to responding to somebody. So even if they comment negatively, in most cases, if really your response should just be full of nice, and if you have nothing nice to say.
And it'll drive someone who's trying to get under your skin absolutely freaking mental if what you come back with is more positive than ever, because they're just like, dang it, I didn't make her angry. Good, back to the drawing board. So one other thing that I kind of hinted at in the chat, and something that I talked about in my micro session during BlizzCon Canada. Woo! I had so much fun, by the way. Did you have fun?
I had a blast. I was sick the whole time. Oh my god.
I felt so bad.
But I was a trooper, I think. I made it through, so.
Yeah, well, speaking of sick, what was sick was BlizzCon, and not in the bad way, in an awesome way. And we were lucky enough to be community leaders. We were lucky enough to be a sponsor from Main Street, and just get to see
what was your best BlizzCon memory? Quick, one sentence.
Quick BlizzCon memory. Just, I think in general, my whole kind of takeaway from it all was BlizzCon has become a family for me, and a place that I can go to be inspired, and it's really hard to be inspired sometimes when you're living the day-to-day monotony of life. So I was happy to be back. I was happy to be within my people, and I took a sense of direction and not letting myself get steered off course, I think, is a really big one, because sometimes, it's hard. It's easy to go the way the wind blows, but if you have goals and you want to accomplish them, you have to kind of stay true to that and decide what it is that will help you do that. What about you?
Okay, I'll say this. I'll say it in a couple little things here. My micro session, awesome. It went so well. I'm so happy. I was so nervous. It was awesome.
I was going to give you a little for that one because nobody showed up to my micro session.
Actually, to the point where tomorrow night, all my micro session, well, not all of them, but a whole bunch of my micro session people were having an extended version of my micro session. So it's going to be very fun.
Any spots left?
I'm full for tomorrow night.
Oh, it's small. So if you want to book a new session with Jen about Google Analytics,
I'll have another one for sure. And then number 2, introducing Matt Clark. Oh my God, that was like a huge highlight because I have a total like fan crush, YouTube crush on him.
Chatting with Matt Clark. So who we're referring to is Matt Clark from Conversations with a 2-year-old from his gigantic, huge, enormous YouTube channel, who came to Bliss and taught us all about kind of going viral in a way and like what it took for him to get there. It was a really interesting kind of conversation that we were all having. I feel like I didn't feel as much he was giving a presentation as sort of like having a one-sided conversation with us, which was more fun.
Yeah, it was definitely fun for sure. And then the last one, Speaker's Corner.
Yay! I know. Speaker's Corner was so fun.
My whole life, when I was growing up, I always wanted to go on Speaker's Corner, and I just was always too young when that was like in, and I used to watch it on TV, but we didn't live close enough, and because I was an hour away, we didn't just go to downtown Toronto, so I always wanted to be on it, and I was just so excited that I finally got to be on it.
Every time I went there was always people in the booth, so I was like, oh, you come back later.
Yeah.
So the one thing I wanted to talk about in terms of my micro session uplist, the people who did come, I hope they took something away from it. Unfortunately, I think maybe it was a bit of a misnomer. I think, honestly, and I know we talked about this, the reason why not a lot of people signed up to my session, outside of the fact there was lots of sessions and lots of awesome topics to sign up for, was a lot of people think, oh, I'm not a huge blogger. I don't have major traffic. This doesn't affect me. I don't have to worry about haters and trolls because I don't have any right now. And my response to that, ladies and gentlemen, Jen knows this very clearly, is you never know when that moment's going to happen, and I swear they should offer training in it because it is not easy to deal with. The influx of everything in your life for the next 48 hours on can change drastically, and how people perceive you changes drastically, and how you what you say is scrutinized is a lot more different. Great English, Christella. No wonder people scrutinize you. But honestly, no, that's what it comes down to. Is yes, you might think, oh, I'm not a big blogger now, nobody's reading my blog, or my business isn't super successful, we only have 67 likes on Facebook. Any minute, anytime, something can make that different. And not only do you want to achieve that, you want to grow your audience, I would hope, as a blogger or as a business, you want to grow your reach, you want to grow your audience. But when you do that, and when you do start getting those people, how do you handle it? We've kind of talked about a few of those tonight, which is awesome, and I've loved our conversation tonight. It's been so fun. But I think my biggest takeaway from my experience with the post going super viral, almost 1 million shares, 500 plus comments of people who are happy and sad and elated and overjoyed and angry at me for no reason at all. And I realized something, which is blogging, or putting anything out into the world in a sense, is a way to hold a mirror up to the person who's reading it. So the way we as bloggers look at blogging or putting our content into the world is really different than the way people who are consuming our content look at it. And I think we kind of feel a catharsis with getting some stuff out sometimes. And I think that, we're trying to put out good into the world and improve people's lives, like Jen Penarski was saying. But what we don't realize sometimes is the impact of what we say often has nothing to do with what we're saying or how we're saying it, but how the person is interpreting it who's reading it. And I know when the Maria Kang thing happened last year, people were all up in a tizzy because she said, what's your excuse? And I wrote a big kind of response post about, well, my excuse is this, and other people's excuses are that, and who are you to say, what's your excuse, when you don't know my life, man? And that was sort of my my overall response to it. I just summarized that nicely. You don't know me. But no, it really, it is holding a mirror up to the person who's reading it. So when I'm reading a blog post, I'm feeling my emotions coming through on what they're saying. And sometimes when you show someone their reflection in a new way, and they perceive themselves in a new way, and they don't like the way they perceive themselves, they lash out because they're angry and annoyed, and they don't want to see themselves that way, even if it may or may not be true.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, those people lash out a lot, and that's okay too. And I think there's some bloggers who handle that better and are more excited about kind of stimulating that sense in people than others. But keep that in mind too when you're blogging. It's when you're putting something out into the world as a business or a blogger, what you're saying is reflecting in people. And so when they're commenting, they're speaking to their own personal experiences. And they're really just trying to be heard in most cases. But when they aren't just trying to be heard, they're trying to tell you that you've offended them. You can't control that you have offended them. And, that's okay. It's okay to offend people sometimes, as long as you're not being offensive. I think there's a difference between saying something that offends someone and saying something that is unilaterally offensive. And if you have a quick definition between those two things, you should be okay. Jen, do you think when it comes to blogging, is there a way for bloggers to say what they need to say without offending people?
Sure. I mean,
I wouldn't
really.
know.
Absolutely, that's the approach that I typically take. So if I'm going to write about something that's sort of, on the, there's maybe two different kind of strong opinions on it or whatever, it never hurts to basically to write about both sides. So there's some unique ways you can do that. If you want, it could be as simple as, hey, this is what I think, and then even just saying something that I understand that that's not what everybody thinks, and just basically validating that you're not saying that you're, everything and that your opinion is the only opinion that matters. The other way I've seen it done is some bloggers will grab a second blogger and they'll do sort of a he said, she said split thing, and it's kind of a unique way to do it, whereas two people are working together to basically show two sides of the story. I love posts like that. That's a great way to show, you can show your opinion, but also you're showing that there is another side to it as well. And or don't talk about it. That's where I typically tend to fall, and I don't. If
the WASP approach to things, avoid.
If you're not willing to accept the comments from the people who are going to disagree with you, then don't write about it. If you don't have that thick skin yet, you might get it. Compare me a year ago. It is, and you do, and there's always going to be a first time. There's going to be a first time that you're going to get that first comment. Don't ever respond to it immediately. Go take a step back, even write your response, but don't send it, and then go back later and then see, because a lot of times you'll read that response, it'll light a fire in you, and you'll get so angry or upset. Go back to it later when you've calmed down a little bit, and then go, wait, I see their point. My opinion is my opinion.
You formulated an actual response to what you want to say about it, how you actually feel about it, as opposed to how you initially feel about it, which can make what you say more eloquent and harder to argue. Or you can do what I do, and when somebody upsets you in any way, you call Jen and say, this guy said something rude about me, and then she'll tell you you're being ridiculous. And it's all good. But yeah, I mean, if you have anything else to add to this conversation about negativity, how you handle negativity, what was the worst negative experience you've had on social media, if you're a business, do you have a more kind of difficult approach to handling social media? Do you have a lot of product? Do you deal with a lot of negative attitudes? Is it your location? What is it? Let's have that conversation. And just so you know, we have a new announcement coming up with Main Street and Town Hall Chat. So Town Hall Chat has been a really fun experience for us. We love what we're doing so far. And one thing that we're going to be looking into or doing in the coming months is offering live workshops. So where we are having an awesome conversation now about negativity and negative commenters and detractors on social media and angry customers and stuff. Business owners, some blog owners, people who participate in social media in general can sign up for our workshops, which will be online. So it'll be an extension of this conversation, but more tactful approaches to how to actually handle things. And so we want to know kind of what it is that you want to learn about. So if you have a topic suggestion for Town Hall Chat, if you have something you'd like to do in a workshop with us, if you want to learn how to be a blogger, if you want to learn how to grow your audience, if you want to learn how to write awesome pitches, if you want to, figure out how your business can grow on social media, increase your reach, what are you doing wrong, all that kind of stuff, we're going to have these awesome extended Town Hall Chats where you can join us live and have an actual one-on-one conversation with either myself or Jen. So if you think that's an awesome idea, let us know, and we want to hear more about your ideas, of course, because you, as our customers, our readers, our friends, our clients, are the ones who really inspire us to do what we do. So, Jen, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think you got it all covered. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm
Well,
so
it was
tired.
awesome seeing everybody today. I think everybody might have missed something that's happening here. We didn't really discuss this situation. What's different? One of these things is not like the other. No, I changed my hair, guys. I know it's a big deal. I'll take questions on it after Town Hall Chat. I'm sure there'll be plenty. No, I needed a change, and I'm really happy with it. And I want to know what you guys think. Do you like my new haircut? It's super exciting. Jen, what do you think of my new haircut?
I love your new haircut.
Jen watched me getting the haircut, so it's probably less exciting for her.
I told you to get the bangs.
You did, but you were like, get the bangs. But the crazy thing is, I cut my hair. Here's the full thing, by the way. 3 weeks ago, dude. Look how long my bangs are already.
You need a trim.
My hair grows really fast, apparently. So, to end off Town Hall Chat in the most obscure, random way possible, thank you for joining me and Jen for Town Hall Chat. Once again, we're here every Monday, 9 to 10 p.m. We're at Twitter on Town Hall Chat hashtag, and we'll be talking about different things. Next week, Jen,
What?
so you're having your big, so when's your first Google Analytics session? What day is it?
Tomorrow.
So do you think that next week we can talk about Google Analytics on Town Hall Chat?
Yes.
Yay! Everybody's been waiting for it, so congratulations, everyone. We're going to be talking about Google Analytics, best approaches, best practices, your questions. I'm sure you'll have many. And we'll see you here next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. From us to you, see you later. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next Monday. Bye.
Bye.